This episode is all about protecting your dealership. It's probably your most valuable asset. Are you doing everything you need to protect it?
Welcome to Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. Prepare to learn something new about the industry that keeps us moving.
Welcome to this next episode of Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. And in this episode, we're going to talk about protecting your dealership. It's probably your most valuable asset for most dealers. The most valuable thing they own is their dealership. You've got people, you've got money, you've got equipment, you've got inventory, you've got all sorts of things of value. Now, how do you protect it all? And so in this episode, we're going to really talk about doing a all hazards analysis and looking at ways that you can protect it against all sorts of hazards and threats. It's important to take this all hazards approach to make your business more resilient. We'll have an emphasis on criminal threats, but there are all sorts of things that can be a threat to your business. And we're going to use a framework. It's the Assess, Prepare, Train framework. So we're going to start with a risk assessment. And from that risk assessment, we'll talk about preparations that you can implement as a result of it to prevent or deter hazards, to respond to hazards, and if in fact a hazard arises, to mitigate those hazards. And then finally, we'll talk about training and procedures, skill set, mindsets that you need to impart on your employees in order to protect your business. So let's talk a little bit about the risk assessment. It starts out with hazard identification. What are the threats that are specific to your area, to your business? From there, we'll go to a vulnerability assessment and then the impact analysis from it. So the threats. There's a lot of different things that can be a threat to your business. It can be weather, stuff like flooding, severe thunderstorms, hail, tornadoes, winter storms. It could be stuff that's geological, like earthquakes and sinkholes. It could be biological. We just had the whole COVID-19 pandemic a few years ago. That's probably still going to be a threat going forward. It could be accidents. It could be workplace accidents. It could be structural failures, something collapsing, machinery, equipment in your shop, stuff like that. It could be criminal, like terrorism, active shooters, robbery threats, larceny and theft, fraud. Could be riots. And then technological, it could be something like hacking, hardware failures, corrupted data, stuff like that, malware, ransomware, all those other types of threats. You need to go through your business and evaluate what those threats are. There's even more things that you could consider, like utility outages. It's always an issue for your dealership when the power goes out, internet goes down, stuff like that. Fire is a threat. Hazardous materials, stuff that you have in your service department. Are you close to a nuclear power plant? There's probably stuff to consider if you are. It could be stuff like a medical emergency, employee or customer. And then supply chain interruption. If one of your vendors goes down, if your dealer management system provider goes down, that's also a threat to your business operation. From there, you want to do a vulnerability assessment. And this is going to be a tabletop or mental exercise to evaluate various vulnerabilities. And you want to be brutally honest about it. You got to be, for this to be useful, you got to be willing to admit where you're not prepared. But go through, make a list, and consider how vulnerable are you for each of these potential threats. You got to reject the denial behaviors as part of that. Nothing ever happens around here, or you are just being paranoid, or it's too expensive to do something about it. Or for criminal threats, well, I'm in a good area and the police are always here in a 1-minute response time. It's true. In a lot of areas, the police can arrive in 1 minute under optimal conditions. But when things go wrong, that police response might be 5, 10, 15 minutes away. The behavior that the odds of something happening are so low. It's possible for lightning to strike. It's possible for lightning to strike the same place twice. We want to reject these denial behaviors and just be really brutally honest in our vulnerability assessment, where we stand, where our biggest threats are, in order to identify what we need to be able to do to protect your greatest asset. which leads to what we call red team exercises. These are mental or tabletop exercises where you literally attack your business. You got to think like a criminal when we're talking about criminal threats. How would they attack your business? How would they conduct a robbery, for example? Where are you most vulnerable? How would they break into your business? How would they break into it after hours? If someone wants to steal catalytic converters, what's the best way to do it? What's the best approach? What's the way they're most likely to get away with it? You got to assume that the criminal actor is smart and well prepared. One of the things that people often think is that criminals are dumb. And certainly there's plenty of dumb criminals out there, but there's also a lot of smart ones. And it's the smart ones that can do the most damage. Identify your vulnerable assets, vulnerable spaces, and vulnerable times. So part of this vulnerability analysis is to look at, where is the money located in your business? People, data. These are all things that you are responsible for protecting. And this is literally what the criminal does when they're looking at your business as well. They're trying to make assumptions or glean intelligence about where money is kept, where people are and where people aren't. And when it comes to data, the hackers, the social engineers, the people that are trying to get into your data, they're looking at those vulnerable assets as well. Also look at vulnerable spaces. These are things like entrances, ways to get into your building, ways to access your lot, storage rooms, employee-only areas that a criminal actor is going to want to get into. Are these areas well secured? Are they easy to get into? Are they easy to get into at specific times? We think about vulnerable times. So opening and closing, are those times that you're more vulnerable? Vault access times, if you have a time safe on your lot. Areas where you have reduced staffing periods, so you don't have as many employees on site, perhaps at closing time, might make your business more vulnerable. Or perhaps in the morning, your startup crew is just a couple people. That might make it a more vulnerable time. Stuff to think about. You got to think about the human element. Don't focus entirely on just physical security. Is your staff aware of security threats? Are doors being propped open that need to be locked? Is there a door to the back of your business that is being propped open that needs to be kept locked? Can a visitor sneak through your vulnerable areas undetected? From there, you want to prepare. You want to be prepared, prevent or deter what you can, to respond to what you can't, and to mitigate when the event does occur. So in preparation, we want to do stuff to reduce the likelihood of the incident occurring. One of the ways that we often do this is through training. And that's where we do a needs analysis. What type of security training, what type of hazard mitigation training do I need to provide my employees to make sure that they're able to deal with these type of events? And we want to imbue a certain mindset through that training, that we consider security to be really important, that they are responsible for certain security behaviors, such as not propping doors, keeping doors that you need locked, keeping control of keys. Key control is always important with a dealership. We want to have the mindset about stuff like mitigating social engineering behaviors. So passwords and not responding to phishing emails and everything that comes with that. Training topics can include stuff like access control, computer crime and fraud threats, opening and closing procedures, being able to identify suspicious behaviors, security awareness type stuff, and emergency procedures like calling 911, how to make a good 911 call, robbery procedures, should that occur, active shooter procedures, and then stress management, being able to deal with stressful situations and being successful at mitigating threats. Couple things about physical security to talk about. A lot of dealerships have alarms. A lot of dealerships have cameras. Alarms are valuable because they provide notification and mitigation. Often a criminal actor, if they trip an alarm, know that they don't have a lot of time to stay on that location. But it's important to recognize that those alarms, when they do result in a police dispatch, that is the lowest police assignment priority. And they have a high false alarm rate. And despite what we want to think, alarms have a low deterrence factor. For the most part, criminal actors are not deterred by alarms alone. Cameras, they're valuable because they provide validation that a crime occurred. They have some investigative value, but that investigative value is often pretty limited. They can't make an identification by the camera footage alone. One of the things to consider is getting an alarm system that includes off-site monitored cameras. So the camera validated alarm response in most cases will become a higher police priority when it's dispatched out that cameras confirm that a criminal actor is on site, that the crime is in progress. That gives it a higher priority. Unfortunately, these systems are a little bit more expensive, but for some dealerships, this is going to be pretty valuable and something to consider. Other things to consider are stuff like motion-activated lighting, fencing, bollards, and access control. One of the things that I think is underutilized is window security film. There are a few different manufacturers, most notably, though, 3M has a security film. And what it does is it applies to windows, and it makes it extremely difficult to break through that window. The glass will still shatter, but the window remains intact, so it's hard for a criminal actor to pass through that. It doesn't make it bulletproof. It doesn't do anything beyond just making it hard for a criminal actor to pass through a window. But if you're trying to prevent someone from breaking into your dealership, that 3M security film can be pretty valuable. Another thing to consider are safes. Do you need a safe for dropping payments or cash into? A time safe if you're in an area with a substantial robbery threat. And it could also be valuable to hire after-hours security for a periodic security patrol service. If there is a company in your area that offers that, it can be valuable, help deter stuff like catalytic converter theft and stuff like that. Let's talk a little bit about catalytic converter theft in particular. So catalytic converter theft is driven by its high resale value, and it's a real expensive issue that a lot of dealers are dealing with. One of the problems is that the target hardening measures are expensive. The things to do to a vehicle to make it difficult to steal a catalytic converter are often pretty darn expensive. One thing to do is consider serializing catalytic converters. If you can etch a serial number that you record, it's something that you can provide to law enforcement and potentially eventually find where these catalytic converters are landing. If law enforcement identifies a suspected catalytic converter thief and they can tie the serial number on a catalytic converter that they recover to a catalytic converter stolen from your property, that has both investigative and prosecution value. And it's also good to be a good partner with other dealers and law enforcement if this is an issue in your area. Talk to law enforcement in your area if they have intelligence or best practices or things that they recommend. Finally, for all of these hazards, it's good to have a good incident response plan. Your employees should know how to lock down your business, how to call 911, talk about situational assessment and prepare for emergency services, how to make emergency notifications, especially if you as the dealer and your senior management are off-site. There's going to be notifications you're going to want your employees to provide. You're going to want them, in the case of a criminal incident, to preserve evidence and cooperate with the investigation. And you're going to want to talk about post-incident considerations, stress management, stuff like that. With that, we hope that this helps prepare your business a little bit better to deal with all sorts of hazards, including the criminal ones. And now it's been another episode of Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers.
Thank you for listening. Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers, is a production of Meta Financial Services Incorporated.